Welcome again to the Freeman Project. It has been quite some time since I've posted on here, but the recent events have brought up a topic that I am usually very interested in explaining to anyone willing to listen. The event I'm referring to is the shooting of that politician down in Arizona. Don't remember her name at this point, but it's irrelevant. What has occurred after this shooting is a prime example of the affliction across this nation. Worship of the government, the heroification of the political class, the placing of those in government above the rest of us. It's not inherently driven by the people. It's mainly driven by the media, and the people simply soak it up and parrot those beliefs or structures. It's the media that has placed this politician well above all the other victims in this shooting over the weekend. By covering the shooting of the politician nonstop and simply stopping for a few minutes after many hours to mention the few others who were killed or shot, provides a pretty stark example of who the important people are and who the unimportant people are in society. I've already heard the label hero being tossed around about this politician for doing little more than simply being a politician, and thus somehow becoming the target of a nut. That brings me to the second part of what I'd like to talk about, and that is that the individual who did go on this rampage and shoot people up at the political rally was a definite mental patient with little or no political ideology behind his drive to what he did. And the fact that the media is trying to find a political drive to his actions is probably the result of two things at work. One is everyone hates a mystery. They want to find out why events like this occur. There must be an explanation. And it's a great soap opera to watch that truth come out. And it is a great letdown and disappointment when it finally solidifies or materializes to the fact that there was no reason for the killing, that the perpetrator was simply crazy. That's a big letdown, because many people want to have reason for events like this. They can't settle on the fact that there was no reason for it. And the second thing driving this is that the media would love for that reason, if they could dig it out, to be that there is a radical right-wing group or groups across this nation who are driving violence, in particular violence against the government. And that's the funny thing. Their targets are actually as big of statists as the left is. That is to say that they're targets of who they want to point the finger of blame at, like the talk show hosts on radio, like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, and many of the conservative / Republican politicians like Sarah Palin, etc. Well, they're just as big advocates of the government as the left is. You may find that odd to hear that, but the fact of the matter is that Republicans are simply the other side of the coin. They advocate as big, if not bigger, government than left-wing socialist Democrats do. They simply have different goals for that government, different aims to put that enlarged government in. But they still hero worship the same government officials that the left-wing socialists do. So it's funny in the sense that the media is aiming at these people and missing, because there is no justification for the acts of the shooter. You can't tie him to those groups. And secondly, because there really are groups that promote rhetoric that could lead to violence against the government. And this is one of them. The Freeman is one of those groups. You have to understand that at some point it is a logical certainty that an American countryman must say that it is time to go to war and take down the government. There must be a point at which every American says that, if they truly are American countrymen with the spirit of those who founded this country, the First Republic, still running in them. If you can sit there and think in your own mind through a series of events and not come up with that combination of circumstances that dictate to you that yes, at this point there are no alternatives, then you are not an American. You are a foreigner. You are a subversive, and frankly, you aren't worth it. You don't deserve to live in this country, because you're just pushing it down the road towards the bitter ending. And what are those parameters at which point an American must say that force must be employed? Violence is the legitimate alternative. Those points would be at which a government has finally detached itself from the people. It has in effect become a foreign government to the people, much like the British government was at the time of the First Revolution. It was the colonist government in the sense that they were British subjects and citizens, but they were subjects. There was no democratic means by which they could exert their will over the events that they were being governed by. And so too today, if one can look at the situation and say that the government is detached, that it has overrun its constitutional boundaries, and that the elections are no longer true elections but merely fake propaganda to promote the false belief that the people still have some say in their government, then at that point the only logical resort is to violence. or at least intimidation with the promise of violence, which is the point of this movement, that we would like to show this government that we are prepared and have the capability to take it down, but that we would simply prefer that they step down when they witness the numbers and power of the joined American countrymen against them. So you should simply ask anyone who might argue with you on this point, is there any set of circumstances, or at what point is it legitimate to employ violence against the government and politicians and agents of the government? And if they cannot come up with any set of circumstances, no matter how tyrannical and oppressive those circumstances may be, whether it's a confiscatory tax rate of 70%, an arbitrarily narrowed field of political candidates to choose from, a constitution that has been overrun, candidates who are only beholden to moneyed interests and merely pay lip service and employ propaganda to get a vote. If they cannot come up with any circumstances along those lines at which point they consider it to be legitimate to employ violence, then you have nothing more to argue with those types of people. You must simply walk away understanding that they are not Americans, and that they would gladly continue onward into the realm of slavery, utter slavery. Again, to get a glimpse of that realm of slavery, all you have to do is watch any documentaries of life in the Bolshevik Russia, the Soviet Union, or even fictional works such as 1984. We are approaching 1984 very quickly. So that is the essence of where we stand as freemen on the employing of violence, where it lies in the equation. It is legitimate when a threshold has been reached, and it is up to every countryman to understand what those thresholds are in their own mind. You must at least be able to articulate it. If you don't even have the courage to sit down one evening and think through your mind what constitutes a tyrannical government that has overflowed its boundaries, to at least set a point at which point you can say, yes, things have gotten out of control, well, then there's nothing to talk about. You have simply accepted that anything goes and that the government is always right, because you have nothing to measure it by. So simply take the time and effort to at least clarify in your own mind where you stand, knowing that at some point the founders would begin shooting. I maintain they would have began shooting long ago. But every American countryman must make that calculation at some point. And we cannot get caught up in this worship of government officials and politicians as heroes, as untouchables. No, they need to be reached out and touched. In the end, that's the only way to put the fear of God back into this government. I thank you for listening. Goodbye and good luck.